I'm Connor Wold, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And here we are, the penultimate video of this season, my final predictions for the 2021 Oscars in all 23 categories. But if you're new to the series, I'm Connor Old, and what I've been doing for the past 4 or so odd months has been predicting the Oscars. First of all, I started off by breaking down the different categories and what I think was going to get nominated. Then once the nominations happened, I gave my thoughts and predictions on SAG Awards, Golden Globes, and everything award season related. But here we are with the final predictions for the 2021 Oscars in this gigantic, massive video, in what can only be described as maybe the strangest year in Oscar history. Even though the Oscars have many strange years, this has been the longest, definitively, coming all the way here into April. Next week, I'm going to be talking about sort of my reactions to the award show, which will come the Monday of after this Sunday. So where do we go from here? Well, it's the penultimate episode, meaning that the ultimate episode will be airing on Monday after the award show, where I'll be giving my thoughts and reactions to the award show and the ultimate winners and what I got wrong and what I got right, as well as announcing a return of a fan favorite series that I think you guys will be a fan of, particularly if you're a fan of Oscars. So that should be a lot of fun. Once again, leading into the next Oscar season, I can't believe I've already done my 5th one. Then we're going to go into our 6th. If you don't know, I've been very accurate over the years in terms of overall predictions. Sometimes certain categories like Best Picture, I'm never maybe the best at because there has been surprises in recent years, but I'll explain all of my predictions now. So just jumping into it, I'm going to give my thoughts on what I think was going to win, not the sort of runner-ups or who I want to win, just the analysis of what I think is going to win with some other side conversations and just explaining in each category why I think it's going to win, say, over another movie. And for Best Picture, I'm going to go with Nomadland. Now, I mentioned at the top that my track record for Best Picture isn't terrific, which is something I'm not entirely proud of. But that's because I think in years like last year with 1917, I think I would have picked 1917 10 out of 10 times, frankly, because I'm a man of statistics and facts and logic. And 1917 was the one that had the most precursors, had the most likelihood to win, and therefore I went with it. And that's been existing for things like La La Land losing to Moonlight, or even something like The Shape of Water losing to 3 Billboards, or Shape of Water beating 3 Billboards. There's situations where sometimes this award wins and sometimes the other precursor matters more. It's hard to judge, but I think this year is going to be Nomadland because it has those precursors, like I mentioned. So it won the Producers Guild Award, it won BAFTA for Best Film, it also won DGA. PGA is probably the most indicative because they use a preferential ballot when deciding their Best Picture. So that was really indicative of saying that, wow, even in this preferential ballot system, Nomadland could win very easily. It's also a movie that's been the frontrunner. It's been the frontrunner for a long time, and nothing's really swayed against it. And if anything, the guilds have shown us that there is a split divide of what people think is going to win. Trial of Chicago 7 won the Screen Actors Guild, which is probably the most significant out of all the other award precursors. But then, loses out to something like WGA, To Promising Young Woman, and doesn't have all the technical support, and could be in a scenario where it wins Best Picture and nothing else. I mean, that's a very real possibility that could happen, but because of that low likelihood, I just don't see that happening, because Nomadland does fit, I think, with the modern mold of more recent Best Picture winners like a Parasite, like a Moonlight, these sort of smaller independent movies from underrepresented groups maybe in cinema, sort of the outsider elements, which I think Nomadland sort of fits into very well. I think Chloe Zhao has a lock-in to win Best Director, and of course winning Best Director always helps your chances of winning Best Picture. I think they will win Screenplay, which I'll talk about later on, and it fits that kind of a mold of the more recent winners while also being the frontrunner, while having the precursors. Everything sort of just lines up very well. And my analogy this year is I think the frontrunner will win in the same way that the Los Angeles Lakers won the NBA Finals or the Tampa Bay Lightning won the NHL Stanley Cup. Ultimately, this is a situation where just the best team or the best movie or the frontrunner that should win just does win. I think there's going to be low engagement. I don't think people are going to be energized to maybe do something different and radical. I think they're just going to go with the flow, and in that flow, I think will be Nomadland, the sort of already presumptive winner. So it fits the logic of past winners. It has been winning pretty much everything. Golden Globes, BAFTA, PGA, DGA, all the precursors, has some technical support, has some acting support in the sense of Frances McDormand. That's my one concern, is that it doesn't have enough acting support, which does concern me, because the Screen Actors Guild wouldn't go for this movie at all. So I could see a possibility of Trial of Chicago 7 upsetting, but once again, it would be an upset, and I still think Nomadland is the smartest choice and the most likely choice to win here. And then for Best Director, I have Chloe Zhao for Nomadland for similar reasons as I just mentioned. This will be the second time a woman will have won this award, and the first woman of color to win this award. I think Chloe's a terrific filmmaker, and this is her third film, but there's many things going for her. First of all, I think it's going to win Best Picture, so that always helps. She won the DGA, and the DGA is an incredibly accurate guild in predicting who's going to win for Best Director. The movie has a very distinct style, of which Chloe, even though this is only her third film, I think has accurately and aptly developed that sort of Terrence Malick-esque kind of a look and naturalistic lighting and realistic kind of a beautiful look at political or sort of head-on social issues. She's also a director that is liked by the sort of the indie art house people, but also by the sort of big time blockbusters, because her next movie is going to be a Marvel movie, Marvel's The Eternals. So that tells us that the big Hollywood blockbuster guys kind of like her too, because she's sort of being tapped as the next big thing there, helming a huge Marvel movie. So she's going to be liked by a lot of different directors. Of course, this is voted on by the largest voting group, but I really don't even see a secondary contender. Even if Nomadland doesn't win Best Picture, I think Chloe Zhao will still likely win for Best Director. Now for the dreaded Best Actress conversation. My Best Actress is going to be for Carey Mulligan. Now, if you don't know and you haven't been following the precursors, this is an incredibly contentious award, because every single televised award show or sort of predominant award show has gone to a different winner. Carey Mulligan won Critics' Choice, Frances McDormand won BAFTA, Viola Davis won SAG, and Andra Day won the Golden Globes. And as a result, I think all four women could win, but I'm going to explain to you why I think it's actually going to be Carey Mulligan by going through the nominees. So in my final slot, I have Vanessa Kirby, who I don't think is going to win. She's not won anywhere despite being nominated pretty much everywhere. It's very rare for a first-time nominee to win if she hasn't won many times before, so she's not having that ingenue factor. Additionally, she's also the only nomination from her movie, and her movies are disappointed, not getting in for something like Ellen Burstyn or even for Best Original Score. So she's probably not going to get it based on the fact that she's been nominated everywhere, hasn't won anything, and she's the sole nominee for her movie. And then in fourth place, I have Andra Day. She's the dark horse, and she still will be the dark horse, but she's still not the likeliest of winning, I think, because she's only been nominated for the Oscar. She wasn't nominated at SAG. She wasn't even shortlisted at BAFTA, but yes, she won the Golden Globe, which is actually a very accurate award in telling the acting awards, even though the Golden Globes voting body is only about 87 people, where the Academy's is thousands. But she has the factor that she plays a real-life person, which they love. She's almost the unanimous, well-loved person within the movie. She could be the sort of singer, actor turned, and sort of reward her in that sense, being the sort of brand new person into Hollywood and sort of crowning her as maybe a next great actress. But I think the movie is too underseen. I think the movie is too disliked. And oftentimes when we see situations where actors win for movies that aren't liked or are their own sole nominees, if you think of something like Julianne Moore from Still Alice, that's a situation where they've been winning for a while. It's sort of been predetermined that this is what's going to happen. Very rarely does it happen where, there was just kind of a one-off nomination and actually that person won. It's a very real possibility, but I don't see that happening. Then I have Viola Davis in third place. Tying back to Andra Day, it's maybe reductive to say, but I think they are similar in many ways. And Andra Day supporters may drag some of the votes away from Viola Davis supporters, that they may split the vote in the sense that they are both black actresses. So they're both sort of campaigning on the story that this would be the first black actress to win in the lead actress category since Halle Berry. Viola Davis would win her second Oscar. So that gives her an extra edge over Andra Day, that Viola Davis is very much more liked than Andra Day. Her movie is also more liked, getting 5 nominations. Doesn't have Best Picture, but the movie could walk away with 3 or maybe even 4 wins. So Viola Davis could sort of ride the wave of that movie. She also won the Screen Actors Guild, the SAG Award, so that really helps her in terms of momentum. But that being said, I do think some of those votes are going to be drawn away and split between her and Andra Day because they have a similar role, singers from this period in the 30s, playing real life people, very different people, I think, but still there can be sort of some overlap in terms of the diva element and whatnot. Viola Davis also puts on a lot of weight and makeup and really transforms out of all the actresses, once again playing a real life person. All these things help her, yes, but I think the fact that her movie was not nominated for Best Picture, frankly, I just don't see a situation where she wins Best Actress, because if you look at Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, well, I think it's going to win for Best Actor. Do I really think it's going to win also for Best Actress? Even though it wasn't even nominated for a screenplay, it wasn't even nominated for a Best Actor, or excuse me, a Best Picture, or Best Director. I mean, this movie isn't as well liked. So would I really see 2 of the lead acting categories go to this movie? It could, because the Screen Acting Guild does give a lot of influence and does tell us a lot about the acting awards, but I don't see it this case with Viola Davis. I think they like her a lot. I think she's won recently for 2016 for Fences, so they're not going to give it to her. I think the movie's not as well liked, and I think she's going to get some of that votes drawn away from her because Andra Day is in this category, so that's why I have her in 3rd. And then in 2nd, I have Frances McDormand. She has the support in the fact that she's already won twice, so that maybe goes against her because she has already won twice, so she would have to give the sort of exclusive access of being a 3-time winner, which includes very few people, which would be very difficult for her. But I think she can ride the wave of the Nomadland hype. I think if you think it's a Best Picture winner and you think you can win Best Director, well then, who's to say Frances McDormand, the lead of the movie, isn't to win in this very open race. She also won the BAFTA, which definitely helped her chances, and she is the soul of the movie in many ways. That being said, I think the fact that she has won recently, it's not a big overt performance. Oftentimes we see movies like Joaquin Phoenix for Joker, these big sort of announcements kind of performance or transformative performance. Frances McDormand doesn't really have that in this movie, so she doesn't have that going for her, so she would have to be swept up by the strength of the film. But those are the reasons against everyone else. Ultimately, my pick in Best Actress is Carey Mulligan for Promising Young Woman. Now, I've gone over this category more than I will others, just because I know for many of you at home, it is a contentious category. You're not sure who to pick. But I'll tell you why I've gone with Carey Mulligan for Promising Young Woman. Frankly, there's a few reasons going for it. The first being, I think that this movie is very well liked. The same reason why I think Frances McDormand is in 2nd place and Viola Davis is in 3rd is that Promising Young Woman is a movie that was nominated for Best Editing. It was nominated for Best Director, Screenplay. I think it's going to win Screenplay, Best Picture. It was a very well-liked movie throughout. So much so that I think Carey Mulligan can ride that success. And I think if you like the movie of Promising Young Woman, well, she's at the front of it. She's very much the lead and has a kind of transformative performance in the sense that she has to play many roles within it. So that the first point being the movie is very well liked. So if you like the movie, I think chances are you'll like her. Number 2, she's never won before. The fact that she's been nominated before 10 years ago for An Education and now has been doing great stuff in movies that have been appreciated by the Oscars, but she hasn't. So think of Mudbound, think of Inside Llewyn Davis, movies with many Oscar nominations, except she didn't get in. But that doesn't mean she's not a great actress. It also means that they've been seeing her in a while, so they sort of feel like she's very well respected, and it feels like maybe Carey Mulligan is a little bit overdue. That being said, she's still young enough that she's not sort of going to be given it to someone that they really like, that she still has kind of a crowning ingenue factor, and in this lead actress category, oftentimes younger actresses win over older actresses. Her performance in the movie, I think for number 3, is also very bold. Like I was saying, it's not the subtle version of Frances McDormand, which is less of the performance that they go to. They like to go for the big, speeching, kind of transformative performances, of which Carey Mulligan has to do a lot. I mean, she has to do sort of like a grief drama, but also a revenge thriller, but also a rom-com. I mean, there's many movies within Promising Young Woman, and Carey Mulligan sort of goes back and forth throughout that range. This is also a situation that because Carey Mulligan didn't win SAG and didn't win BAFTA, it could be something that the Oscars feel unique about, that they don't do the sort of traditional boring picks. That usually they go with the traditional, what everything has been winning, but sometimes they'll go Olivia Colman for Best Lead Actress. And this way, I think by picking Carey Mulligan, it actually gives them a chance to be like, oh, we're a little bit different because we're doing other things people didn't do. Now, I think it's notable that BAFTA had the weird voting process this year in terms of getting the acting categories, but the way I look at it is, I didn't think she was going to win SAG. I was disappointed that Carey Mulligan won Golden Globes, although Andre Day is the classic Globes performance. And if you think that if Carey Mulligan was nominated for BAFTA, she would win, then I think it makes sense for me to predict that she's ultimately going to win for Best Lead Actress. So her role is the type of role that wins. The movie is very well liked. She hasn't won before. I think all these extra elements ultimately push her over the edge. It's going to be a very close race, which is why I outlined everything here, but I went with Carey Mulligan. And I think for a lot of these races, at the end of the day, you have to look at the facts, and most of the facts are going to be a coin toss. Some say, some facts say it's going to be this person, and some facts say it's going to be the other person. So at the end of the day, you have to go with your gut. You have to go with the person that you could see winning. And frankly, I could just see Carey Mulligan in a dress taking that award and really accepting it and everyone being happy for her. I can see it. So ultimately I went for all those reasons, but also sort of a gut feeling with Carey Mulligan for Best Lead Actress. Then for Best Lead Actor, I have Chadwick Boseman for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And now some people may think this is a little bit more of a race than it is because Anthony Hopkins for The Father just won at the BAFTA. However, I think this is Chadwick's award to lose. Frankly, it's a tragedy what happened to lose an actor like that so young. But this is a performance of his that's arguably his best. And very rarely do we get a performance from an actor that has been well respected. He's been in many biopics, Marshall, Get Up. I mean, he has been in a lot of these movies where we thought, oh yeah, he'll probably get an Oscar one day. He's always sort of in these biopics. He'll get it eventually. He has been sort of a respected actor for a long time. And then the fact that he's passed away, and then the fact that maybe his last performance is his best performance. I see a hard time him losing this. That you could explain the BAFTA win for Anthony Hopkins for The Father, the fact that, well, he's British, therefore they're going to go for the British hometown favorite in Anthony Hopkins. But when it comes to the Academy still, while international, is still an American branch. And if you look at a movie like Black Panther, which was nominated for Best Picture, which is also a movie that stars, of course, Chadwick Boseman, but also grossed over $700 million domestically, which is huge for a Marvel movie, and the second highest Marvel movie domestic of all time. It was a phenomenon, particularly in the States, and he was a phenomenon, particularly in the States. He was a huge movie star. He died way too soon. He gives his best performance and arguably his last performance. He won the Screen Actors Guild. Aside from the BAFTA, he's pretty much been sweeping up with everything else. I'd love for him to win, and I do think he's ultimately going to win for the fact of sort of a career achievement because he's passed away, but also because he's delivered a terrific performance in a great movie, and does the whole sort of range of emotions in terms of he's crying, he's yelling, he's getting mad, he has these great big long monologues. There's everything for an actor to really love and grab onto, and I think the overall Academy won't vote against him because he has passed away, but because it's also a great performance and because they want to reward him with this last time that they can. Then for Best Supporting Actress, I have Yuh-Jung for Minari. This was supposed to be at least a surprising kind of a category because the nominations were so weird and so odd, and we weren't sure who was going to get nominated. And then the winner was really up in the air too. But as the season went on, I was surprised at how solidified this has been, and I do feel pretty confident in my prediction of Yuh-Jung because frankly, she's won the Screen Actors Guild, which that was a huge surprise, beating out Glenn Close, sort of burying her chances there. Then she also won at BAFTA, which is another sort of huge kind of sign of surprise. She's done some of the best speeches at that. She's really sort of campaigned and has had the success. And I think there's many scenarios where maybe she doesn't win, but frankly, there's too many scenarios that she does win. A lot of things going for her. Number one, I think, being Minari as a movie. The movie was nominated for Best Director, was nominated for Best Screenplay. I mean, it's a very well-liked movie. And right now, she's going to be the only win from the movie, which makes sense in the sense that if she doesn't win, I'd be very surprised because we know the movie is very well loved. So where does that support go? To me, it clearly goes here. It makes the most sense. She's very much the heart of the movie, the heartwarming grandmother, kind of a figure in the movie. And I think the emotional core, particularly at the end of the movie, if you've seen it. Moreover, I think that we have to forget that, the Academy, while American, is still also international and growing by the day. And this is an Academy that gave the award to Parasite last year. So while Yuh-Jung is a foreign actress, and that's not usually as common, she also is a very big star back in her home country. So the international members will more likely recognize her and will reward her, particularly some of the Asian members of the Academy. So she has that support. But also Minari is a very particularly American experience, and I think the American members of the Academy will also relate to the movie and her performance, because she is the soul of it, the soul heart of it. She won the Screen Actors Guild, she won the BAFTA, she's the sort of representation of Minari and the way you can give an award to Minari, which is a movie we know is very well liked, many things going for it in that sense. It just makes it more and more clear that, Yuh-Jung is most likely going to win in this category, because so many things are going for her, and because the precursors have been giving it to her. Could I see a surprise? Yes, I could see a surprise, but right now I'm not exactly sure who. It's like maybe Maria Bakalova, maybe Amanda Seyfried somewhere, maybe Glenn Close. She's won. She's lost the most Oscars, and will probably continue to hold that streak of losing the most Oscars without getting a win. But we'll see. Hopefully, maybe a couple of years Glenn could win, but I don't think it's going to be this year. I think it's going to be Yuh-Jung. Then Best Supporting Actor, I went with Kaluuya, which was another category that I think is probably, out of all the acting categories, the biggest lock of the night. I think it will go to him for Judas and the Black Messiah. This was a movie that I was very aware of early on. I was telling you guys back in December, hey, watch out for Judas and the Black Messiah. This could be a real deal. This could be a Best Picture nominee, and ultimately it was, and it has a lot of success. And I think I'm a little bit surprised that Kaluuya has been such a solidified kind of frontrunner and leader in this category, but ever since his Golden Globe win, I think has given permission for a lot of people to give him the win. Now, the movie, of course, is very well liked. It also checks a lot of boxes. Playing a real life person, lots of speeches, kind of the way that the film is shot is always sort of from Lakeith Stanfield's character's perspective, so it's always kind of one step removed, so we get to know a little bit about Fred Hampton, but he's also very alluring and mysterious. And Kaluuya is an incredibly young actor for, if he were to win this award, which I do think he will, he'll be one of the youngest actors in this category to ever win, along with Heath Ledger, which is rare in this category, but I'm glad that he does, and I'm very glad that he will win this Oscar, and I'm a fan of him, and I'm a fan of his performance, and I think he's very well liked in the Academy. I mean, this is a guy who got a nomination for Get Out, which is a very sort of straight man-y kind of performance, a very good performance, but one that's not always recognized by the Oscars. So the fact that it was recognized, I think, just gives them the fact that they really like this guy. They really think he's like the next Denzel Washington or Pacino or someone great, young actor, and they want to reward him when he's young and when he's due, and I think this is a great example for it, and I'm super happy for him. He's also won the SAG, he won the BAFTA, he won the Golden Globe. He has won everything and all the precursors, and seems to be the biggest lock in the acting categories because of those precursors, because it checks the fact that he's playing a real life person and has the big speeches and is a very well liked member of the Academy who has never won. So many things going for him, and I'd love to see it, and I do think it'll happen. Kaluuya for Judas and the Black Messiah for Best Supporting Actor. Then Best Original Screenplay, I mentioned it earlier, I think is going to go to Promising Young Woman. Oftentimes in this category, it's very much an emphasis on the original, that the most original movie of the year wins. Think of movies like Get Out, or Her, or even something like Parasite, movies with twists and turns, or unique premises, or just different ways of telling stories, I think often win in this category, very much with the emphasis on original. And I think Promising Young Woman, while I didn't love the movie, does fit into this category. It has all these twists and turns. It's like 3 movies in one. You never know really where it's going to go. It has you on the edge of your seat in many ways, and its approach to storytelling and its perspective is very unique and feels fresh and interesting. Where the runner-up could be Trial of Chicago 7, and if it was to win this award earlier in the night, you could see maybe a potential Best Picture upset, which would be fascinating. But if Aaron Sorkin loses this, I'd be hard-pressed to see him win Best Picture ultimately, and that movie win Best Picture, because And the reason why I don't think it's going to win Best Screenplay is because Sorkin has already won before for The Social Network, because they liked the movie, but maybe they don't want to give it to him because they've already given to him before. And oftentimes in this category, it goes to the movie with the best script or the most original idea. You know, we saw it last year with Quentin Tarantino. He did not win, even though he is one of the most well-respected screenwriters and writers in Hollywood of all time. Yet he didn't win just because he's Quentin Tarantino. They went to the movie that they liked the most. I think in this case, it's a way to reward promising Young Woman as a sort of guarantee where Carey Mulligan may not win, so at least you can get this in here. It's original. It won the WGA and beat out Trial of Chicago 7. It won BAFTA, so it has the precursors as well. So it makes sense that it's going to go here for original screenplay for Promising Young Woman. Then for Best Adapted Screenplay, I went with Nomadland. Now, similarly to Best Actress, I think this is probably the second or third most contentious category of the night. It's definitely of the big categories, but ultimately I went with Nomadland. And there's a lot of things going for it, but frequent commenter George Arrett mentioned in the comments last video, I thought it was an interesting comparison that I forgot about, that I think we should all remember, which was the race between 12 Years a Slave and Philomena for Best Adapted Screenplay. A similar situation happened where I'll explain to you how it happened with those movies. This was 2013, 12 Years a Slave ultimately went on to win Best Picture and won for Best Adapted Screenplay. Now, it wasn't nominated at WGA because I don't think it was eligible. But then it lost at BAFTA to Philomena, but won the UFC Scripters Award and won Critics' Choice. Well, Philomena won BAFTA, so it was sort of going into the Oscar night. It was like, is it going to be Philomena? Is it going to be 12 Years a Slave? It's hard to tell. And the way I see it is that Nomadland is 12 Years a Slave and that Philomena is the father. If you look at Nomadland, it also won the UFC Scripters. It also won Critics' Choice. It was also not eligible for WGA. It also lost BAFTA to a British kind of a movie. And ultimately, I think Nomadland is going to win Best Picture. Therefore, I ultimately think it's going to win Best Adapted Screenplay. And like 12 Years a Slave, doesn't have a lot of sort of dialogue-heavy movie, but will succeed based on the success of the movie. And then Philomena, I think, makes sense with the father. They both won BAFTA. They're both British-type movies. They're both were well-nominated, although the father is more well-nominated. It has 6 nominations, where Philomena only has 4. And I do think the father goes home empty-handed, unfortunately. It's a terrific movie, but I do think it will sort of go home because it doesn't have the sort of X factor that maybe it needs. So I see that comparison very much. So you could go in the same way you thought Philomena was going to beat 12 Years a Slave because it was more script-like. You could go with The Father because it has more dialogue than Nomadland. But ultimately, I think that's really an apt comparison if we look at this, that ultimately The Father's won BAFTA, and that's it. Nomadland has won Critics' Choice. It did win the USC Scripters Award, so it wasn't eligible at WGA, so we don't know. You're right in the sense that it's not a dialogue movie. Yes, that's a good point. However, I think that it's ultimately going to win Best Picture. And The Father, you could say that they're going to spread love and they're going to give it to that and as a playwright, but also remember that One Night in Miami and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom did not even get nominated, and those are 2 plays. So maybe there's not a huge love and support of these sort of play type things, and maybe they'll like the movie. Ultimately, I just think that the support of the movie and the Best Picture element to me just makes complete sense. And The Father won BAFTA, yes, but that's kind of it. And Nomadland has so much support as a movie in general that it's going to be hard to stop. So no, it doesn't have a huge emphasis on its script, but I just think of the support of the movie. And this is one of those things where I think if you have Nomadland winning, you know, for Best Picture and you don't have it winning here, it's a little bit incongruous. And I think you have to make sure that ideally you want to get your predictions 100%. So you have to make sure that your predictions make sense throughout and you're not guessing Trial of Chicago 7 for Best Picture and then nothing else. You have to just a good note is just to want to make sure that everything you have, all of your predictions make sense. But now going into Best Editing, this is the sort of third most difficult category to predict, but ultimately I went with The Trial of the Chicago 7. Now this is even harder than something like Best Actress, because if I lose Best Actress, I'll go like, yeah, well, there was 4 options, so, you know, you never really know. But in categories like this, it's really difficult because, in my opinion, it's very clearly either Sound of Metal or Trial of Chicago 7. And if you pick one and it's the other one, you're going to feel bad because, you know, it's a 50-50 kind of shot. Like, oh, I should have gone with the other one. Now, Sound of Metal could win because it won the BAFTA, which I think is very telling because, of course, BAFTA won. BAFTA is a group of hundreds of thousands of people who vote on the award, so it's like editors and actors and everyone else voting on it, and they all chose Sound of Metal, which I think is telling, whereas Trial of Chicago 7 won the Ace Eddie Award, which is only voted on from editors, so maybe people think of Sound of Metal more of as an editing movie, but I'll tell you the pros and cons. The pro for Sound of Metal being it won BAFTA. Also, you have to go all the way back to Argo in 2012 to have a movie that wins Best Editing that also does not win Best Sound. So there's always a correlation. So if you win Best Editing, you're probably going to win Best Sound Mixing or Sound Editing, or at least, one of the sound awards. Now this year there's only one sound award. They cut it back to only one. And the assumption being that Sound of Metal is going to easily win that sound award. So therefore, if it's going to continue the trend, well, if Sound of Metal is going to win sound, therefore it's going to win Best Editing. There's a direct correlation with that. There's a huge statistical support for that. That is true. However, I went with Trial of Chicago 7. So first of all, it won the Ace Eddie Awards, which is the editing guild. They support that movie. So there's some support from editors within this movie. Also, I think that the movie is the most edited. Maybe not out of all the nominees, but definitely more edited than Sound of Metal. You think of sequences where there's a lot of cross-cutting, where there's sort of flashbacks, where they're at the actual court trial and they're retelling the story, and then we have to go back to the story, and the intercut in different perspectives and timing up with the music. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and when we think about Trial of Chicago 7, I think you think of the editing. And more so the Sound of Metal, which is very much tied in with the sound, and that's the interesting part of that movie, but it's not actually the editing itself is not actually particularly showy necessarily, where Trial of Chicago 7 very much is. So that's the first thing I think having going for Trial of Chicago 7. It is the most edited movie. And number two, I think it is a super well-liked movie. Let's not forget that this won Best SAG Ensemble, that this could win Best Picture. So if you think it's going to win Best Picture, well, it's probably going to win at least one other thing. And so for me, I think this movie is maybe number two in the chances for winning Best Picture. So it wouldn't make sense for me to have it winning nothing. So I don't have it winning Best Screenplay. I think Promising Young Woman, I feel pretty confident in that one. But this one, I said, I'm going to go with Trial of Chicago 7 because it wouldn't make sense for this movie that's very well liked, that we do know has support, for not to win Best Editing. We know Sound of Metal also has this sort of groundswell support, but I think that's going to go to Trial of Chicago 7 because I think it has the most editing, because I think it is a more liked movie than Sound of Metal. I also think it's worth noting that we mentioned the connection between sound and best editing. However, it is worth noting that at the Motion Picture Sound Editors Guild, that went to Trial of Chicago 7. So Trial of Chicago 7 actually beat out Sound of Metal at a Sound Editors Guild. So maybe the thinking being that if there were two sound categories, Trial of Chicago 7 would have at least gotten one nomination and maybe would have won. It's hard to say, of course, for sure. But I do think that because there's only one sound category this year, that we won't see that sort of trend continue. But I do think Trial of Chicago 7 will win because it has the most editing, which is a common characteristic of these winners. That is a very well-liked movie, and it has a little bit of that sound connection because it won the Sound Editors Guild, which I think is important. So for those reasons, I think Trial of Chicago 7 gets for Best Editing. Then for Best Cinematography, I have Nomadland. Now you may go, oh, Connor, is this a race? Is it going to be Mank versus Nomadland? In my opinion, no, it's not. Nomadland won BAFTA, it won Critics' Choice, and for the most part has been winning everywhere, except it most recently lost at the American Society of Cinematographers to Mank, Eric Messerschmidt in Mank. However, I think that only gives more credence to Nomadland. American Society of Cinematographers has not been very accurate in recent years, predicting something like Cold War a couple of years ago and Skyfall even earlier before that and whatnot, that they're not always super accurate. I think actually they've only gotten it right 6 out of the last 10 times. So that's they're not really accurate in that sense that, oh, Mank won ASC, therefore it's winning cinematography. The fact that Nomadland did win in a place like BAFTA gives me that kind of support. I do think Nomadland is also a more well-liked movie than Mank. While Mank is respected, there's still some people that are worried about it, not being shot in film, that's digital, and that kind of hurts the movie. It's also worth knowing that the cinematographer for Nomadland, Joshua James Richards, is actually not a member of the ASC, the American Society of Cinematographers, where Eric Messerschmidt, who won for Mank, is. So I think there's a little bit of a bias there. So that's telling. But ultimately at the Oscars, I think if you like Nomadland, you think of the vistas, you think of the sort of handheld Terrence Malick-esque cinematography. I mentioned, Terrence Malick-esque, but you also think of maybe Alejandro Iñárritu when you think of the movie. And all those movies, the more recent Terrence Malick movies and Alejandro Iñárritu, his movies are all shot by Emmanuel Lubezki, also known as Chivo, who has won 3 times before. So if you think of, oh, Nomadland's kind of like an Iñárritu movie. It's kind of like a Terrence Malick movie. Oh, well, who shot those movies? Oh, a guy who's won 3 times before? Oh, yeah, okay. Well, then it's probably going to win Best Cinematography. I mean, if you think the cinematography looks like a guy who's won 3 times before, well, that's a very obviously a good compliment. And the way it uses naturalistic lighting and how it's very sort of beautiful, but also sort of real and rugged. I think how Joshua photographs it along with Chloe and their sort of vision and the long takes that they do. There's some very great camera tricks as well that are noticeable. And I think it's a movie that was also shown in IMAX in many places as well. So the images are very important to this movie, and I think cinematography should be a slam dunk for Nomadland. Then for Best Documentary, I'm going to go with My Octopus Teacher. This category is really weird every year, so I don't want to make it a definitive statement to say that this is going to win, because we never know. I mean, sometimes they make some weird choices, but in my opinion, right now it's a clear choice to be My Octopus Teacher, because there's so many things going for it. You look at, first of all, it's the most well-nominated documentary that a lot of people didn't even have it in their nominations, yet I remember Banging the Drum saying it's going to get in because it was so well nominated. Got PGA, got DGA, got Ace Eddie, got BAFTA, and then you look at it and you go, okay, well, what did it win? It got nominated everywhere, but did it win everything? Pretty much, yeah. It won PGA, it won BAFTA, and it won the Ace Eddie Awards. Now, documentary, we don't have a clear precursor, so it always bounces around, but those are pretty good, particularly something like the Ace Eddie Award, which has awarded movies like OJ Made in America and Citizen4 and Amy. So most of the time, and the other winners that they've given it to, so something like Apollo 11 or Jane, those are movies that weren't even nominated at the Oscars. So if your movie is nominated at the Oscars and you win here, you're most likely going to win. Now, I could see a surprise with something like Crip Camp. That'll probably be my number 2 instead of something like Time, because it's also backed by Netflix and has more of a traditional kind of a story to it as well. But there's no sort of support aside from the International Documentary Association. So at the end of the day, I think it's going to be My Octopus Teacher. It's got so many things going for it. It's won a lot of things, including PGA and the Ace Eddie Award and BAFTA. It's also supported from Netflix in the sense that it's going to have a big push, and that seems to be their biggest competitor over, I still think, Crip Camp. So it's probably the most well-seen movie. I think it has this great sort of score, and it makes it very emotional, and it's a great story as well. In the same way, I think American Factory is like a great story. In the same way, Icarus is a great story. I think My Octopus Teacher kind of fits that mold. So there's so many things going for it. I know a lot of people are hesitant to this idea, and there could be a surprise because this documentary category is always very weird, but I think My Octopus Teacher just makes the most amount of sense. Then Best Animated Film, I have Soul, which is the clear choice. Frankly, Pixar movies almost always win in this category if they're original movies. If they're sequels, they won't win, but if they're original, they will win as long as they're nominated. So Soul should win here because, of course, it's the largest voting. So everyone votes on the Oscars in all categories. So if you've seen Soul, you're probably going to just give it the award in animated because you've seen it and you liked it. Pete Docter also has a almost perfect track record, winning for Up, winning for Inside Out. So I also expect him to win here. And it's been winning pretty much everywhere, really everywhere else in all the guilds, in all the sound editing guilds and all the visual effects and, yeah, of course, all the animation guilds as well, and award shows and Globes and whatnot. So Soul, I'd be very surprised if it doesn't win. I expect it to win here at the Oscars. Best Costume Design, I went with Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Now, I think this could be ripe for a surprise. I think one of the tech categories are probably going to go off-kilter. Ultimately, I didn't go off-kilter with any of my picks, and you'll notice that a little bit as we go on, except for maybe a couple of them, arguably, but in my opinion, I think the more general consensus is that there's not going to be people that are going to go off the beaten path. That for the most part, the continued winners are going to stay, because it's kind of been a year of people who've tired and the season's gone on really long, and people are just going to reward to whatever they think is the sort of front runner, because maybe they haven't even seen the movies and they haven't been treating this award season with a lot of respect, and because it's like sort of snuck up on a lot of people. It doesn't have the amount of importance that maybe it does in other years, which makes a lot of sense. So you'll see a lot of my predictions because of that. I'm trying to react and say that they're actually going to be probably the front runners, or whatever makes the most sense, or the most logical kind of a way, or one precursors, because I don't think the Oscars are going to be too different this year. So going on that, I do recognize, and I think that there's a potential for spoiler in this category for Emma. I think they love the costume designer Alexandra Byrne, who's been nominated and won before. I think they love to give her a chance to give her another win. I think when you think of the movie Emma, you think of the costumes right away, where you don't necessarily for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I mean, you think of the great performances and whatnot for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. For Emma, you think of the great colorful designs and posters and whatnot. But that movie's also released almost a year ago, and you may also say, well, Connor, it didn't win the BAFTA. Wouldn't a Jane Austen novel, Emma adaptation, wouldn't that at least win BAFTA for Best Costume Design? I actually don't think so, because it's actually directed by Autumn de Wilde, who is an American director, so there may be a little bit of bias against it in that sense, and actually may be doing better at the Oscars. That being said, I still think Ma Rainey is going to win. I mean, but Emma really hasn't won anywhere. Ma Rainey won at the Costume Designers Guild. It won at Critics' Choice. It won at BAFTA. That's a hard trio to beat. It's also a movie that's a period piece, so it gets that. It has the dresses, and more importantly, also it has a good rule of thumb for nominations, but also for winners, is that if a costume design winner mentions a costume in some sort of sense in the movie, or a piece of clothing within the movie, that always gets the love from the costume designers. You know, think of Phantom Thread, which is all about designing and making costumes. Of course, it won for Best Costume Design. Similarly, I think here, because there's a central part of the story about Chadwick Boseman's character, his shoes, so that's an element of literally the costumes that's pointed out, so you're aware of that. So it also has a lot of costumes, period piece. It should be a well-liked movie. It's won everything else. Costume design for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, while I still see there's a possibility, and I feel kind of, you know, if Emma won BAFTA, there's a little bit of an inch that maybe something Emma would tell me, but right now, Ma Rainey is just seemingly too strong and should win this. And then for Best Makeup and Hairstyling, I also have Ma Rainey's Black Bottom for similar reasons, in the sense that there could be surprise here. It could be Pinocchio because of his prosthetics. It could be Hillbilly Elegy for the sort of transformative role. But frankly, I still think it's going to be Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. For most of these tech categories, it's a good general rule to say, what's the most Best Picture like, or what's nominated for Best Picture to win, and Ma Rainey kind of fits that mold. I know Mank is also nominated here, but it hasn't been winning anything, where Ma Rainey has. It won Critics' Choice, it won BAFTA, it won the Makeup and Hairstyling Guild. As well, you know, so I know Pinocchio also won at that award show too, but then ultimately BAFTA went to Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which gives me the edge. It has probably the best hairstyling. You know, we want to mention that branch as well. It has the best hairstyling, I think, out of the nominees, and significant hairstyling, where Pinocchio, for example, is just makeup. I think a lot of people think that they've done more to Viola Davis than actually what happened, in terms of maybe they put a fat suit underneath her, but my understanding is that she did gain a lot of that weight for the role. But in terms of her makeup and how it sort of melts throughout the hot stage, she has very sort of visible, distinct makeup throughout the movie. So I think people think about the makeup when that happens. And yeah, it just, there's no clear number two in my opinion. There could be a surprise, but Ma Rainey's been winning everything else. So who's to say Ma Rainey's not going to win once again? So this would be my third Oscar for Ma Rainey, which would make it one of the highest movies to win awards and not be nominated for Best Picture. You have to go all the way back to something like The Bad and the Beautiful in the 50s, or something like even The Beauty and the Bounty, or whatever, you know, situations where movies get a lot of awards without being nominated for Best Picture. Although Beauty and the Bounty is something different. That's winning Best Picture without winning anything else. So that's a little bit of an odd one. But yeah, so for the most part, it's very rare to get a movie that's not nominated for Best Picture and get all these awards, but right now I have it winning 3, potentially even 4. Then for Best Production Design, I have Mank, which has been winning throughout the season. It should be its only award of the night, and I think this is a movie that is very well respected, but not very well liked. That's why it has 10 nominations, but is only winning 1. I think there's a lot of sort of locals that will appreciate this because they recognize a lot of the locations. I mean, this is in line with past winners like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood last year, or La La Land a few years ago, the sort of Hollywood LA element. So they'll recognize places like San Simeon and Hearst Castle, or the Warner Brothers like lot, and they'll go like, oh hey, I've been there, and they'll recognize that, and then they'll think about the production design when they did that, because of all the recreation they did to make it look like a real old movie. Also from Don Graham Burt, who has won before. Also, the film Mank has been winning everywhere. It won BAFTA, it won at the Art Directors Guild and at the Set Decorators Guild. It won Critics' Choice. This seems to be sort of a unanimous pick for Mank, so this will be a way to reward them, which makes the sense of spreading the love for the most well-nominated movie. The sort of respect situation here fits into production design. Everything makes sense. It very well should be made for production design, and I'd be surprised if it's not. Best score, I went with Soul. This is a year where Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross are actually nominated twice for Soul and Mank, and whenever that happens in the score category, but also in any other category, it gives you a huge boost because you've been nominated twice. So they like you enough to nominate you twice. Well, they'll probably like you enough to give you that win. I think a lot of people were interested in Atticus and Ross when they first came onto the scene with The Social Network, where they won an Oscar for that movie, but have been doing continual great scores throughout this past decade, and finally have sort of been maybe allowed back into the club that, okay, you weren't a one-off time thing, you're actually composers now, you're actually kind of well respected, and we will nominate you here. Soul has been winning everywhere else and has been sort of the lead, so there's no concern over vote splitting. Plus, also in these categories, there's actually going to be no names on the ballots, so people may not even know that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross have been nominated twice. But like I said, Soul has been winning everywhere in terms of BAFTA and Golden Globes and whatnot. So it seems like this is their movie. The movie's also about music in itself, so it has that element too. John Baptiste also does some terrific, more of the jazz elements to the movie, which is great. So there's a huge sort of wide-ranging score of the movie, and I think the trio really do a terrific job, and I personally would love to see this happen, and I do think this will happen. Then for Best Song, I went with Scene from The Life Ahead. And this is a category that some years we know guaranteed, okay, it's going to be Star is Born, okay, it's going to be La La Land. This year, though it's very much up in the air, we don't know what it's going to be. So I went with a little bit of an off-kilter pick. I try to go off-kilter when I can, and I went with Scene from The Life Ahead. And the way I looked at it, the categories was, I think Speak Now, Fight for You from Judas and the Black Messiah, and Hear My Voice from Trial of Chicago 7 are all these kind of social justice stand-up kind of songs, and I think they're going to blend in together. I think people don't even realize that maybe Leslie Odom Jr. is singing the song for One Night in Miami. They nominated him, which is always a good sign in terms of that connection there, but I think they're going to get overlapped and split the vote in that sense. And then it's like the two other movies left, and I look at it, so it's going to be Scene from The Life Ahead, or it's going to be Husavik from Eurovision Song Contest. And maybe it's going to be Husavik because they've been campaigning, and it's a funny song, but I have a lot of issues with maybe older members not getting the Will Ferrell thing and maybe watching the movie and despising it, where Scene from The Life Ahead is a Sophia Loren movie, and it's kind of heartwarming, it's more prestigious. It's also written by Diane Warren, who has been campaigning, and she's an actress, she's a songwriter who's been nominated now 12 times without a win. So the movie itself has a story in the sense that the background story of Diane Warren's never won, let's finally give her her Oscar. But also, I think it will be the most standout song because it also won the Golden Globes. So people, if they're lazy, they'll just go, oh yeah, it won at the Golden Globes, okay, sure, I'll give it the award. Also, I think if you listen to the songs, Speak Now and Hear My Voice and Fight for You, they kind of blend in together in many ways, but Scene from Life Ahead is actually not in English, so that maybe stands out, so you're not exactly sure what the words mean, but it's powerful enough and sort of operatic and grand. And Husavik makes more sense definitely if you've seen the movie, but I don't know if many people will go out and see the movie. And I know a lot of people have seen The Life Ahead because Sophia Loren was campaigning for Best Lead Actress and was doing a lot of campaigning in that sense. So I think people have also seen that movie, so they'll be more comfortable for giving it to that movie. And I'd love to see Diane Warren get the win. She's going to win eventually, I'd imagine, so why not now? Then for Best Sound, I have Sound of Metal, and boy oh boy do I really hope this wins. It should win because it has the most innovative sound design we've seen in years. It has sound literally in the title. The movie is very well liked, of course, getting her a screenplay nomination and of course 2 acting and picture. So we know it's liked, so where's that support going to go? Well, it could go for editing, but it could also, I think more likely, go for sound. It didn't win an MPSE, the Motion Picture Sound Editors Guild, which hurts, but it did win a BAFTA. It also won at the Cinema Audio Society, so it does have some guild support there. And I think more generally, when you think of the larger branch, that every one of the academies voting on it, we know that the movie of Sound of Metal is very well liked. So when you're in the Best Sound category, because sound is so integral to the movie, you almost automatically go, oh yeah, sound, of course. I think the general public and general voting body will just be so nonchalant, non-matter of fact, they'll just go, Sound of Metal has great sound, yes, that's going to win. They're not going to think of its sound editing or sound mixing and that kind of confusion. They're just going to go, great sound, Sound of Metal, yes, check it off. I'd be surprised if it doesn't win, but I'd be really glad if it does win, because it really does have one of the best sound design movies in many years, and so integral to the story, and I'd be so happy if it were to win. Best visual effects, I'm thinking it's going to go to Tenet. This is a very interesting year because there's certain rules that don't necessarily apply, but there are some interesting rules why I think it's going to be Tenet. So essentially the two options you have, I think, are Tenet and Midnight Sky. The Midnight Sky won at the Visual Effects Society at the Guild, and Tenet won at BAFTA. So you may go, everyone's going with Tenet, I'm going to go with Midnight Sky, I'm going to be a little bit different. It's probably a 50-50, right? Because they've split in terms of precursors. That is true, but I think that would be a poor decision. First of all, the usual rule for this category is if you can't nominate a Best Picture winner, therefore nominate or predict a movie that feels more Best Picture-like. Now, Tenet and Midnight Sky feel like similarly in that sense, but Tenet edges it out. Why? It has two nominations where Midnight Sky only has one, and I think actually disappointed not getting in for something like Alexander Desplat. Additionally, there's a clear connection between winning Best Visual Effects and getting nominated for Best Production Design. As a matter of fact, 8 out of the last 10 winners in the past decade that won visual effects were also nominated for Best Production Design. And what's Tenet nominated for? Best Production Design. So Tenet, if it wins Best Visual Effects, will continue the streak of being nominated, winning visual effects, but then also being nominated in production design. So we see a clear category there, where Midnight Sky, that's not the situation. It won at BAFTA. We know Tenet is a movie that's very well respected, but particularly the technical elements of it. More generally, Christopher Nolan's movies are well respected with the technical elements. There were some concerns that the movie wasn't being seen because it wasn't even added onto the Academy streaming service, but it has now been added onto it. So people are seeing it. People, I think, do respect Nolan's kind of stuff in his movies, and particularly the technical craft, and I do think that it is probably the most Best Picture-like because it has the most nominations, because it has that production design correlation. So really, when you look into it, it's like, actually Tenet is a pretty good of a lock, and I would be willing to bet some money onto that. So I think Tenet, even though you think maybe I'll go Midnight Sky, maybe I'll be a little bit different, I think that's a trap, and I think Tenet will ultimately win here. Best International Feature, I'm going to go with Another Round. There has been some concern over maybe Quo Vadis Aida is a movie that surprises because it's been sort of surging late and recently, and people who have seen it have a huge amount of word-of-mouth response. But frankly, I'm not going to overthink this, and I'm going to go with Thomas Vinterberg for Another Round, or the movie Another Round, because Thomas Vinterberg, the director of Another Round, is actually nominated for Best Director. So if he's nominated for Best Director and the movie doesn't win for Best Foreign Film, well, that would be kind of confusing because the director of Quo Vadis Aida is not nominated for Best Director, so that would be weird if that movie did win. And we do see this sometimes with Amelie or Pan's Labyrinth, where these movies get a bunch of nominations and actually don't win the Best International Language category. But in more recent years, Parasite and Roma do still win this category, so I would think that Another Round would win it. And the fact that it won the BAFTA and beat out a movie like Minari at BAFTA. So we know the movie is very well liked. So I would expect it, because it got the director nomination, because it won out at BAFTA, it should win here, and I think it most likely will win here. So I picked Another Round from Denmark to win Best International Feature Film. Now at the end, these last 3 shorts. Best Animated Short, I have If Anything Happens, I Love You. This is from Netflix and is a story about 2 parents who grieve their child after a school shooting. Now usually in this category you go for the happy, fun, kind of animal-friendly or animal-focused movie. But frankly, I think if you watch all these movies, which most of the time the voters in these categories, if you haven't seen them, you probably just skip over the categories. But most of the time, the voters who do vote in this category have actually seen all of them. So I think that if you see all of them, you're not going to go with one about like a bunny and something like Burrow. You're probably going to go with the serious, dramatic one. It feels important because of that. It has Netflix behind it. It's serious. I just have a hard time when you watch all of them thinking, actually, no, I'm not going to go with the one that's serious and feels important and is very well done. I'm going to go with the one about the bunny that feels a little bit odd. It has Netflix behind it. They've been promoting it heavily. It has some stars behind it too. So that always helps in these short categories, having recognizable names. If Anything Happens, I Love You, I think wins here for Best Animated Short. Best live action short, I'm going to go with Two Distant Strangers. This is an interesting category because I could think it goes to Feeling Through, which is almost the unanimous most well-liked of the nominees, but I'm taking maybe a little bit of a cynical approach and go with this sort of time loop, police brutality kind of a situation. Of course, if you don't know, during the voting period, the Derek Chauvin trial has been going on and most recently came up with the verdict, so it has been sort of on the people's minds, this sort of topic of police brutality, so I think that's relevant. I think Netflix has been promoting this a lot with the sort of distinct poster and whatnot, and I think they have been pushing that, so I think Netflix will sort of get over the edge. I think it's very much in your face and abrasive and political, and we've seen movies like this with sort of these big heavy topics that are really confrontational do well here, so it's maybe going to be a split vote where people maybe go with Feeling Through or something like that, but I think the support of Netflix and the more abrasive, in-your-face nature of Two Distant Strangers will pull through, but be aware of something like Feeling Through. People have been sort of knocking it off, but I think it's actually probably the best out of everything. It's the most cohesive, and maybe if everyone's watching them, they'll probably go with Feeling Through. So watch out with that. Let a Room could win, but I don't think that's going to happen. Then Best Documentary Short, I went with A Concerto as a Conversation, which I think stands out because it is the most uplifting out of all the nominees, and oftentimes in these categories you want to go with something that's different and unique because they're probably all watching them at the same time, so whatever stands out in voters' minds is probably what they're going to pick rather than what they actually like the most. And A Concerto as a Conversation also fits the bill of what is the funny name of the year, very much in this category. If you think of past winners, How to Skateboard in a War Zone, Highway is the heaven is like a 405 highway, Los Angeles. What's that one called? Heaven's like a traffic jam on the 405, I think is what it's called. Anyways, weird names in this category often do well. So to me, that indicates A Concerto as a Conversation or A Love Song for Latasha. I went with A Concerto for a Conversation because it's the most different, the most uplifting out of all the options. Also from New York Times, so it has a little bit of a serious, prestige-y element to it. Also executive produced by Ava DuVernay, who has been doing a little bit of campaigning and support for the movie. So I think it's going to get in for the short category. And hey, these are the categories that sometimes trip you up. I can't do a whole lot of analysis aside from this small little bullet points and actually watching them, but I do pretty well in these short categories every year, getting, you know, at least a couple of them. So they're the make or break categories. You never really know, but those are ultimately my picks. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your thoughts. I really love to hear it, especially this is the final one. Please give me your predictions. I'm trying to upload this earlier than I have done in previous years so I can hear it and we can get this feedback. So if you're staying tuned, please enjoy and please let me know what you think in the comments down below. But that's the reason why I do these videos, to create a community of people that we can trade our thoughts and analysis and have a good time. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned till Monday where I give my thoughts and reactions and announce a new series, or announce a return of an old series more aptly. But that's about it, guys. Until next time, stay tuned.